Hey, close the door and take a seat a second. Now, I'm not angry. I'm not disappointed. I'm just confused. So, Sonic Frontiers, you got your final update a few days ago, The Last Horizon. This update brings back playable characters who have not been in 3D for over a decade. There's a lot of promise there. You add a new ending, which theoretically is much more interesting and robust than the original ending. And you do all this for no price at all. All it costs is my worthless man-hours. And yet, I think you've done a disservice to yourself. Okay, I'm not angry. I'm concerned about you. So I think if you were on the fence about Sonic Frontiers, if you finished this game and thought, I don't really have any strong feeling one way or the other, this update will probably make you realize that you don't like the game. Now, personally speaking, I still enjoy parts of Sonic Frontiers. I still think it's mostly a good game, with lots of promise and potential for a roadmap for the future. But being promising for the future isn't really good enough for a standalone product. And this update definitely does more bad than good. And I kind of wish that they charged for it if it meant, a higher quality, a higher level of polish, more quality assurance. So, instead of going too deep into it, I want to talk about the interesting part first, which is the playable characters. Now, Sonic Adventure is one of the first games I ever played, and it's a very special game to me. I play it at least once a year. And there was a time in the late 2000s where there were criticisms flying around about Sonic's friends, and Sega took those criticisms to heart. They said, people don't like Sonic's friends, they just want Sonic. And I want to emphasize right now, the friends aren't the problem. It can be really fun to play as other characters in 3D. Tails in particular is really fun to fly around with and break the boundaries, and Knuckles is fun to glide around and change the objective, and it's all really good, and it's a natural way of extending replayability without it feeling forced or artificial. It's just a cool way to play through content that already exists. I think playable characters are a very natural and organic way of making a Sonic game longer, which is already tricky because Sonic moves so fast. You've got to create all these giant levels to house him. And I think playable characters are the best way to play with that. Now, Knuckles, Tails, and Amy in the Sonic Frontiers DLC are all worse than these 20-plus-year-old games. I want to start with Knuckles. So, Sonic Frontiers is a game that merges sandbox platforming with combat. Not a single one of these characters is good for combat. For one, they all have skill trees for some reason. And in these skill trees are just normal inputs. So punching and crouching and stomping and the side loop, these are all in a skill tree. You have to find points and spend them to unlock a punch for Knuckles. And once you've got that punch for Knuckles, it's just a 3-hit combo. So if you were to lock onto an enemy and try hitting them 3 times, you will stagger after that third punch, and you'll be open to hits. And yeah, you can counter, which is also in the skill tree. But there's only so many hits you can get in, whereas Sonic has this rapid, lots of combos, lots of different things you can do. He is viable for combat, whereas not a single other character is. And in the game's fairness, they do de-emphasize combat for the most part. I mean, there are a few bosses circling around the world, but for the most part, they don't expect that much of you. Also, it's very funny that Knuckles cannot beat the defying gravity allegations, as there is another, just like Sonic Boom, there's another glitch that just, a very easy one that allows you just to go really high just by doing the 3-hit punch combo, going into a counter, and doing it again. It just endlessly goes into the air. But I think the biggest problem with Knuckles isn't just the punching, which, by the way, is worse than Adventure, because in Adventure you can run and punch at the same time without slowing down. Like, keep running, like punch open a box, keep your momentum going, whereas in Frontiers you come to a halt when you punch, which, I don't know why you do that. But anyway, the real problem with Knuckles is the platforming, and this is a problem for all of them, but especially Knuckles. So, in Sonic Frontiers, there's a double jump. I have my feelings about the double jump. I don't particularly like it in this game, but it is far more of a problem when there's a tertiary jump. So you jump again, and then there is a third special jump. And with Knuckles, not only is the glide looser and less responsive than it's ever been, but before it starts, he goes and then goes into it, which is this weird stagger. In Adventure, you jump in the air to get your height, and then you glide. If you're already in the air, you can just glide already, because why else would you need to jump again? Whereas Sonic Frontiers has two states of stopping you from going instantly into that glide. The first state is the double jump, and the second state is just that stagger before going into a glide. It's odd. I don't really get it. What else is strange about Knuckles is his climbing, which has always been like an iconic trait of the character, going way back to his debut on the Mega Drive, it feels like a mod. Because it's the exact same as Sonic's parkour, where you can only do it on those sort of black walls. Knuckles now has red walls where you can climb up, and it just feels like they've swapped Sonic's climbing animation for something that involves Knuckles' fists. It does not work differently at all to Sonic's climbing. And it's strange because there are slopes in Sonic Frontiers world that Sonic can't quite climb up. And it would make so much sense for Knuckles just to be able to make his way up them. But for some reason he can't. It's just those red ones. And somehow, I think it feels worse than Sonic's climbing. These always were a little bit fiddly. Like if the camera was in an odd position, it wouldn't quite respond to where you want it to go. But I don't know, there's something just odd feeling about this. So Knuckles, all around, just not a very good character. And then we've got Tails. And Tails is a funny character, which I think is the best thing you can achieve with Tails. So if you are a fan of Sonic Adventure, you know that Tails is busted, in the best way possible. It is fun to exploit levels as Tails. It is fun to, in Windy Valley, follow the pop-in, and just fly as far as you can. But Sonic Adventure had these limitations in place. If you were to just hold down the fly button, you wouldn't last very long. That Windy Valley exploit is only possible because the level's in a decline the entire time. So you're not really holding down on the A button. You're just letting him sort of hover and float down. Whereas in Sonic Frontiers, those limits are ridiculous. You can fly for a very long time. But I do have problems with the execution to how you start to fly. Again, the double jump is still there, and then there's the third state, and Tails kind of also has apart from instead of, he goes, so before you can fly, first you do the double jump, and then you do the little spin, and then he goes in the air. And I don't quite know why it wasn't just an instant flight. Like, what do we gain from that little propeller jump? It makes platforming very slow if you're doing it like the way you're meant to. But, of course, most of the time, you're probably not going to do it the way you're meant to. You're probably just going to follow the pop-in. Because there's always markers telling you where to go, so it's so easy just to jump into the ocean and find the exact platform that you needed. And what's also weird is in Tails' skill tree, you can unlock the plane from Adventure 2, and this thing lasts as long as your boost lasts. So if you get an infinite boost, you can just fly anywhere you want, ever. And if you don't have an infinite boost, you can fly out of that state. So if your boost runs out, you can then jump out of it and fly. And once your boost has come back, you can fly again. It's ridiculously busted. And I kind of like that. I like that there's a little bit of, will to break the game in there, especially so late into the game, given its post-game content, essentially. So being able to fly around the island, it's cool. I do, however, wish that they wouldn't bring Tails' mechanical side into his moveset. Like, it's a cool personality for the cutscenes, but Tails has a fully functioning tail that you can use to whip people with, but instead he's throwing endless wrenches at them. I want to whip people with that tail. I want the visceral combat. And that kind of brings me into Amy as well. So in Sonic Origins Plus, they made, or just Sonic Origins in general, they made a cute little wink to Amy's Sonic CD manual entry where she says that she likes cards. And they have her reading some cards there. That was very cool. It was a great callback. And like some comics have done it in the past, Sonic Chronicles Dark Brotherhood's done it before as well. Like it's not like an untouched part of Amy's lore, but it's not a core part of her personality. However, Sonic Frontiers just dives all the way in, and now Amy doesn't really have a hammer anymore, and her core purpose is these cards. In cutscenes, it's all about cards. In combat, it's all about cards. Her jump is her summoning these cards to give her this giant boost in the air. I'm just kind of perplexed, and I feel a little bit gaslit. Like, is Sega just trying to tell us, like, yeah, Amy's always loved cards? What do you mean, hammer? No, it's always been about cards. Yeah, like, you can't just ignore 30 years of Amy using that hammer. It just to replace it with these cards. And yeah, the hammer is technically still there. Her counter is the hammer, but it's almost entirely around these cards, which is odd. Now, her actual platforming is probably the best of the bunch. I think her third jump is still the same problem. Jump, double jump, third jump. I think it is a better version of what Knuckles has. Because first you have that third jump that launches you in the air. And that makes the most sense of all these jumps because it is just kind of a triple jump rather than another purpose behind a double jump. However, once you're in the air, you start gliding, which is exactly what Knuckles does. Only you don't have. You just go straight into it. And it kind of feels like the best of the bunch. And in general, she plays just like Sonic, apart from she has that third jump. I think she's pretty good. Just a confused character, though. I kind of wish that hammer. I want to hit things with that hammer because no one is good in combat. No one. The cards aren't good. Tails' wrenches aren't good. Knuckles' fists aren't good. And I do think there could have been potential to whack stuff with the hammer and make cool combos out of that. But yeah, for the most part, you actually don't play these characters that much. So the core of the DLC update, or just the update, is Sonic. So every now and then, you would have to go and collect emeralds as these guys. Some of them will unlock switches, other ones will collect the emeralds, and it's these very bite-sized back and forths. You can of course explore and get 100% completion as everybody, but the bulk of the game is Sonic climbing these stupid little towers. Now, yeah, there was criticism that the core game was a bit too simple, and to the game's credit, there are no 2D sections. I think they realize that 3D is the strength of a sandbox, and you don't limit the dimension when there's free exploration. And there are new cyberspace levels too, which I think are genuinely very, very good. Praise. There's praise for those things. But the towers are so fan-made feeling. There are floating blocks everywhere, and it doesn't feel play-tested. So there are certain challenges in this game where I flip to easy mode, because it is what it expects of you is not anywhere near what a human can do. And when I flipped to easy mode, I realized that the platforming in these towers actually made more sense. So when you're doing it on normal mode, there are these homing attack chains, and if you were to fall down the tower later and repeat the whole chunk, you will realize that you can no longer homing attack these set pieces because they're gone. And you now have to awkwardly stand on the edges and just make your way around. But if you're doing on easy mode, there's balloons there. So they realized there was a problem, but they only fixed it for the easiest difficulty. And once I realized that they were there, I was like, oh, I'm playing on easy, let's flip back to normal. And then it was just nonsense again. So climbing these towers just feels unfair. It doesn't feel difficult, it doesn't feel challenging, it just feels finicky. Like these controls and these jumps are not solid enough for what they're asking of you. And it made me wish that Sonic had something like Demon Turf. So Beebs in Demon Turf, for those who haven't played, can place checkpoints whenever she wants to. Because it's quite a vertical design game. So if you were to fall to the ground, you'll be like, oh, I've got to do this all again. But if you place the checkpoint, you can just warp straight back up to it. And I think that would be a great idea for what Sonic's doing here. Now, granted, other towers in the game kind of have that. Like, that you can push down, ropes that will let you go back up if you fall. So that's kind of a checkpoint. But these towers have none of that. If you fall, you've got to do the whole thing again, and they're asking so much of you to memorize. It's very poorly choreographed. It's just tedious. And then when you get to the top, you're rewarded with some of the worst challenges in the game. It just makes combat a chore. It makes playing it a chore. And I think I wanted to stop playing it several times. It wasn't fun. And then once you've done all of that, there's a final tower. And when you've climbed to the top of that final tower, there's a boss rush. And you get 400 rings to defeat the first 3 titans. Only you can do it with a perfect parry. So you can't just hold down L1, R1. You have to do it right when the boss attacks. If anybody did this on normal mode, or even hard mode, congratulations to you. Because I had to switch to easy. There was no way. Easy gives you a slightly larger parry window. And there was no way I could beat the second boss without that. No way. I had to, even on easy mode, I had to play repeatedly. Because it's been a long time since I fought these titans. I had to memorize them again. And every time you fight them, you've also got to do the run up towards them. So, yeah, not only is it just fine, there's just all this downtime between them. So if you reset, you've got to do the whole thing again, including the downtime. It's just not very fun. However, doing everything does give you a pretty cool final boss. And I don't want to spoil anything on that front, but it doesn't make it worth it, but it does give you a good last impression at the very least. But everything leading up to it is just negative. I think this is a dangerous DLC to release. I wouldn't have done it. And if I had, I would have given much more budget to it and charged for it. Because this is just not good enough. It's not fun. It's not what the characters deserve. And if they were hoping to take what the work they've done here and apply it to a Sonic Adventure follow-up, I would be severely disappointed. I don't want Knuckles feeling like this in Sonic Adventure 3. And if he does, it's not going to be a good game, quite frankly. He doesn't feel good enough. None of the characters do. And to be honest, Sonic doesn't feel good enough. His jump is still quite rigid. Turning around while jumping feels odd at all times. And yeah, I like the mid-air momentum, like the boost you can do in the air. But I feel like we've got to scrap all this double jumping and just get a good feeling regular jump. We've definitely got to scrap whatever that is. So it's definitely ambitious, and I guess I can't be too upset with something that was free, but man, if this is the future of Sonic, then please go back to the whiteboard and start again. Because I don't want to be too harsh, but it's not very good. Sonic Frontiers was already kind of a mixed game, and this just ends it on a very low note. Though there's a lot of new story and recorded dialogue, and there's some cool lore in here. Like, clearly there was a passion. I think this was always meant to be how the game ended. If you remember, like, the original Sonic Frontiers had this cutscene where you restore Sonic's friends, but then they just very quickly go back to their cyber state and restore Sonic. Like, it felt like there was a cut segment there where you were meant to play as them. And I think that's just what they've done here instead. Maybe they ran out of time with Frontiers and cut all those ideas and put them back here in the DLC. That's what it feels like. And even if that's the case, I think they made the right move cutting it. Because if this is how Sonic Frontiers ended, I can guarantee you it would not have scored as well as it did. Everyone who played it would have had a bad impression by the end. But am I being too negative? Am I just seeing the wrongs and the wrongdoings? Let me know. Did you have a good time with this? I hope you did. I hope you enjoyed Knuckles. I hope you feel that is a worthwhile addition to his moveset, because I frankly feel like they have so much work to do. But thank you for watching, everybody. You can stand up now. The door's unlocked. Yeah, low energy video, but man, I don't know what to tell you. Man, I expect more. Bye, everyone.